Good weekend all the way around. LSU a win. The Saints a win. High school football back playing again. All of that was good. Entertaining days in both college football and the NFL. But for LSU, they went into this game, Jacob, wanting to accomplish certain things. They wanted to be able to run the football after Texas A&M had put up nearly 7 yards a carry, and they certainly got that accomplished, averaging 5 yards a carry and going up over 160 yards. John Emery with a breakout game, over 100 yards for him, and looked very good doing it.
So not only wins for LSU and for the Saints, but they actually fixed some of the things that went wrong the week before. So that was important. Were they perfect? Absolutely not. But they did work on those things. And if you heard me in the first part of the show today from Sammy's, building blocks is going to be my theme for the rest of the week, especially when it comes to LSU, because they kind of started back from scratch. I think all their blocks, Hanny, you see the bully kid comes and knocks all the blocks over in the playground. Well, that's what happened to LSU, and they had to start to build those things back. Well, I thought they ran the football, and they ran it in different situations. I thought the first down calls were fantastic this week. I thought Myles Brennan took a step, right? He wasn't reluctant to throw the ball. He wasn't hesitant to step up in the pocket. He did those things. Was it perfect? Again, no. There's a couple of passes behind players, but overall, I thought Myles Brennan improved on the things that he had to improve on. He didn't leave the ball short on his deep throws. He was confident when he threw it out there to John Trey Kirkland on the trick play there. Even on that play, go back and watch that play. I would encourage every LSU fan to go back and watch that play, because you're going to be, kind of taken away from what Myles did because of the ooh and ah of a flea flicker. He moves just slightly to his right because he feels the pressure coming from his left, and he takes a shot. But he stands tall, makes enough movement to be able to get that ball off, and then it ends up being a touchdown for John Trey Kirkland. So those things were important to see from Myles Brennan. The defense played more zone. That's what we were asking. Okay, what are you going to do as a change of pace, because you just gave up an SEC record? Well, they did those things, and so it was encouraging to see some growth, because there wasn't ever going to be a lot of credit thrown playing against Vanderbilt, but they did the things they had to do to put a block up. Now you got to continue to build those blocks from Missouri.
If the word a week ago for Brennan was tentative, I would say that the word this week was comfortable.
Yeah.
He looked very comfortable in what he was doing, and he delivered a lot of balls on target, some of which were dropped, but he looked so much more comfortable than he did a week ago against Mississippi State. They got perfect balance on first down, 18-18, pass to run. Last week, they had gotten away from that in the first half. It looked like they got off schedule a good bit. They got better in the second half, but in this game, they were pretty much perfect. So those things, great improvement on the offense. They wanted to defend the pass better. I understand that Vanderbilt's never going to be confused with the air raid, but they held Ken Seals to under 50%, 113 yards through the air. They picked him twice, and that's going to get it done. They wanted to get off the field on third down. Last week, third down was a huge problem for LSU, especially third down and long. They weren't quite as good as maybe they wanted to be, but 7 of 17 is a number that on this night you can certainly live with. Some individual performances. I thought Derek Stingley looked none the worse for having missed a week. Whatever it was that sidelined him a week ago didn't appear to have any effect on him in the secondary nor in the kick return game. I thought when Trey Palmer went out to field one that they might have pulled him for the rest of the game just as a precaution, but he went out there the next time. Thought that Cam Wire was terrific in his first start. We were concerned about that. We talked about having to help him in protections. That never really materialized. Brennan wasn't sacked in the game. Did an excellent job in the run game, I thought, as well. We saw Jaquilin Roy for the first time, and really a nice debut, I thought, from him. You can see that the big man can move a little bit. The special teams, save for one bust on a kickoff return where it looked like they expected him, I thought, to probably – I can understand how the kickoff team, gets lulled to sleep because Atkins drills everything into the end zone. You're never going to get a whole lot of credit for beating Vanderbilt. I understand where that program ranks in the hierarchy of the SEC. Okay, it's last. But there was one point in the game where they had to respond, and they did, and it was late in the first half when Vanderbilt put their only touchdown drive together. They had a long play on that play to Johnson to Cam Johnson on that drive, and then the conversion was 3rd and 8, which 3rd and goal from the 8, which you figure that's an advantage defense down, but Vandy converted on that. LSU at that point led it 14-7, and there was just about 5 minutes to go, a little under 5 minutes to go to the break, and they went down the field in 15 seconds. 2 big plays by John Emery, one in the run game, one on a little swing pass, and then deep ball to Terrace Marshall, and right there immediately. 3 plays, took about 15 seconds in clock time, I think, and they're right back up to a 2-touchdown lead. If there was any part in the game where LSU could have waffled a little bit, said, okay, we let them back in the game. We've played 25 minutes here. We're up a touchdown, and it really feels like we ought to be more than that. That was the place where they could have blinked, and it could have gotten sloppy, and they could have limped home, 24-10 or 24-14 or something like that. They didn't. They quickly extended the lead, and then even though Vandy got the kickoff return, they got a little bit fortunate. They missed a 22-yarder. Like you said, it wasn't perfect. There was one coverage bust or just a man beaten, whatever you want to call it, on a wheel route down the sideline that if Vanderbilt executes it, they either score or they get very close. Yeah. It's going to be a big, big play. LSU caught a break there where the ball drops incomplete. So a lot of things. I like your theme. I like building blocks. I like that they bounced back mentally. I thought that was good. Didn't come out sluggish. I thought they came out running the football, enthused and ready to go. So good win. You move on from here.
A couple of the biggest positives for me after I rewatched the tape yesterday, the offensive line I thought made strides in the mental mistakes that they made. Right, it wasn't really one-on-one battles that you necessarily lost against Mississippi State. No, it was a lot of MAs. They cleaned those up. We didn't notice Cam Wire, which is a very big positive, because if you notice an offensive lineman making his first start, it's probably not a good thing. And so I thought he played really well. Got to get a little bit better, a little bit tougher in run blocking, but I still thought he played really well. And this might be the game that propels John Emery to be a star. Now, I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying he's going to get a bulk of the carries moving forward as far as a lead back. But he made his case. I think he made his case. And not only this week, because I wanted to see. So I went back again, Hanny. I don't know why I do this to myself. And I watched all of his runs against Mississippi State. And he actually ran the ball extremely tough. That's not really what we know him for. We know him to get him in space. He's an elusive back. If you just give him a swing pass, he'll make a guy miss and he'll take it 60. He ran tough. He's changed that part of his game. And if he can do that along with what we know he can do in open space, it's going to be hard for 18-3 to get carries away from John Emery. So this could be a game. Again, not going to get a lot of credit for Vanderbilt, but it was more of what he did because the other backs didn't have as much success as John Emery had. So this is what he did. And I think you can take away from what he did is potential, just potential to keep growing as a football player.
I'm fine with him earning those carries, and he's earning those carries. We talked about this at the beginning of the show. You've been a part of a running back rotation before. It a lot of times involves running plays that you're comfortable with that work against other teams. I think you said the zone was your play that you were most comfortable with. We referenced in the 2003 season how they had a running back rotation, and early in the season it was Chiron Carey, and in the middle of the season it was a little bit of Ali Broussard. At the end of the season it was Justin Vincent, and LSU's had success that way before. So they'll all continue to play. But if Emery emerges as the lead back, then he'll have earned it, and so be it. They're not going to just anoint him. He's done the job.
I think regardless, you're not going to see just one guy. Like last year was a very big outliner in who LSU is. They've never, had that in the last, we could throw since 2003. They never really had just one guy. Because even when Fournette was here, guys got some time, right? Darrell Williams still got his time, and so you still had multiple running backs carrying. Last year, you had one guy. You have one guy that got a bulk of the carries and more than a bulk. And so this year, even if John Emery does become the star, which, again, man, I hope he does because we saw glimpses of it in the last 2 games, you're still going to get carries from Ty Davis-Price and from Chris Curry.
Chris Curry's injury wasn't specified. He was a game-time decision. It doesn't appear to be anything too serious. You had a question about or you had made a point about Edwards-Helaire being the outlier. And we're talking about number of carries here.
Yeah, and I know people can point to the 2018 season and say, well, Nick Brissett was the guy who had all the carries. Now, he was the leading rusher, but the numbers aren't really even close. When you compare what Clyde did in 2019, so in 2018, Nick Brissett had 240 carries, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 146, almost 100 more carries, but still Clyde had plenty of work. When you look at 2019, Clyde had 215 carries. The next closest to him was actually Joe Burrow. So you have to go all the way to third for a running back, and Ty Davis-Price only had 64 carries. So you're talking about 215 to 64 compared to what they had in 2018, which was 240 and 146. Last year doesn't happen a lot in LSU football history, having that one guy. I mean, think about it. Go back to, Kevin Falk had Cecil Collins. He had Rondell Mealy. He had his guys, Leonard Fournette. I mentioned had Darius Geis. I mean, everybody's kind of always had someone who took a lot of the stress off of them. And Clyde last year really was the guy and the only guy. I mean, Ty Davis-Price had moments. He had 64 carries. We all remember the Florida run. But this was Clyde's team. I mean, Clyde was the workhorse. And I don't think you're going to get that regardless of who plays well. I think you're still going to get 3 guys that get carries. The numbers aren't going to be that great.
Another question was who we think LSU's number 2 receiver is. And right now, I would tell you it's Jaray Jenkins, that they have looked in his direction probably as often as anybody besides Terrace Marshall. I think if you want to say Eric Gilbert, that's probably not. That's just as good an answer. I think Jenkins has come up bigger than we thought. Wasn't a guy we talked about a whole lot in the preseason. Had a massive drop, though, in this game. It was a 3rd down. It would have been a 1st down. It would have gone into Vanderbilt territory. It was the first ball I've seen him drop this year. But it was a big drop. But right now I would say Jenkins.
I'd agree with you there. I mean, Eric Gilbert to me is going to be the guy that you look for on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, over the middle of the field. And really one of Myles' best plays was an easy 7-yard completion to Gilbert where he stepped way up in the pocket, kind of slid to his right, bought time, and completed the pass. And so that was a great play to see from Myles, but I think that's what Gilbert gives you. He gives you that outlet on 3rd down where you're going to be looking for him. But I think Jontre Kirkland's going to be your jail screen guy. He's going to be your flea flicker like we saw. That was the 2 plays that he scored on, kind of like, Derek Dillon type. It's kind of been in the past as well. But I think that Jenkins is it's going to be an 18-yard dig route type of receiver because you have that confidence in him where I don't really see Jontre or anybody else doing that. Now, the surprise, I guess, would be Racey McMath. Now, Racey did have one big play in this game on a 3rd down, but I think that a lot of people had him getting more targets at this point, and he's only had 4 catches on the year.
We had another question. We talked about this in the first hour, but a lot of people aren't on schedule yet to listen to us in the first hour of the show on Mondays because we're starting at 10. But it was, how do you feel about LSU's loss to State now that Arkansas came back and beat Mississippi State in the 2nd week of the season? And we spent nearly an entire segment talking about this in the first hour, but it bears repeating at this point. I actually feel a little bit better about it, and the reason is LSU lost the game because they ran a ridiculous scheme. They had the blueprint on how to defend that air raid. It was well done. Matt Flynn sat here. Well, he was on the phone, but he sat here and told you everything you needed to know. It was very obvious the teams in the Pac-12 that had slowed him down, most notably Chris Peterson at Washington, what they played. The excuse that, we didn't have any film on them is not valid because he's always run the same stuff. If he had come out with something completely different and caught him flat-footed, I'd have said, oh, wow, man, how could you ever expect it?
He stuck to his little note card.
Yeah, this was the same stuff. And it was, we thought before the game this is what they're going to do. When they didn't have Stingley, I guess they panicked or whatever, but they stayed in a scheme that was not conducive to winning that game. So the reason I feel better about that is because that's easier to fix than if, oh, wait a minute, you don't have your dudes. Is Mississippi State closing a talent gap on you, or are these guys not as good as you think? No, they weren't put in position, even without Stingley, to make plays against that team. Arkansas, who hasn't won a game in 3 years in the league, put that scheme together. This was Barry Odom, the former Missouri coach, is a DC there, and they did exactly what you have to do against that offense, which is keep the ball in front of you, make them make play after play after play, and wait for them to make a mistake. And Costello threw 3 picks. It's that simple.
Into zone coverage.
Yeah. I mean, come on. This isn't a second guess. Right. This isn't, look, a week later. It's like, no, how did they lose? That's how they lost the game. No, we knew that right after the game, and we know it a week later.
That's what we talked about all last Monday. We talked about the adjustments that were not made. And when you saw a team adjust to it, Mississippi State struggled. Now, they still got their yards because they threw it 60 times, right?
Yeah.
But when you throw it 60 times and you only get a little over 300 yards, you feel pretty good as a defense. And that's what Arkansas did. And I thought Arkansas did a really nice job of keeping everything in front of them. Now, Kylan Hill didn't play in this game. Kylan Hill was the one guy that really crushed LSU. They had no answer for him. Still, though, I mean, I don't.
But in the passing game,
yeah, in the passing game, and he only had one rush in this game. Didn't have a catch before he goes out. with injury. So that would have changed it a little bit, but still Arkansas did what they had to do as far as adjusting to what Mississippi State did against LSU.
The reason I feel better about it is that's easier to fix.
Right.
You can go in and fix schematics a hell of a lot easier than you can fix. It's like, wait a minute, are these guys not as good as we thought they were? Are those guys better? Are we seeing a little bit of a shift here? No. You got coached out of your headsets one day. And this happened in Bo Pelini's first tenure at LSU.
Yeah.
The first game that he coached against Arizona State, the defense was massive confusion. They didn't understand what he was teaching. We did this. We did this whole segment last week.
We even looked up what Sam Keller was up to today.
We did all of this a week ago before we even saw. We didn't need to see Arkansas beat Mississippi State to know what you have to do to defend that offense.
Right.
It was proven again, but it's been proven before. It's not that the offense can't succeed. It's not that they're not going to win games. You can't shut it down completely, but there is a way to defend that. And what LSU did wasn't it. I mean, you leave yourself vulnerable. So,
again, we talked about it. Look, in the first quarter, okay, stay with the same game plan that you have when Stingley was in the game plan. See if you can man up with them. See if your athletes can keep up with them. See if that's the answer. It wasn't, but it never changed. So that was the problem. And again, last week, the whole conversation. I mean, we were on 4 hours on Monday, and I think we spent a bulk of the time talking about that.
Yeah, we did. Do you think, let's see, all the different players that caught passes in this game, and I think it was 11 that caught it. So the question is, can we expect to see 7+ players catching passes, or do you think it'll whittle down to 4 or 5 guys?
No, I think this is kind of what you're going to see. Now, it's not going to be this heavy of a number, but let's go down the list real quick. Terrace Marshall, yes. John J. Kirkland, yes. Butte, yes. Gilbert, yes. Jenkins, yes. McMath, yes. And then throw in the back. That's 7 guys right there. And multiple backs could catch balls. So
seven's a reasonable number.
I think so.
11 that's in a blowout.
And they want to get Trey Palmer the ball. Now Corey Moore and Alex Adams had catches. I don't expect them to have a lot of catches this year, but no, they're going to go 7-8 deep.
Yeah, I think so. Then you may not see somebody catch as many balls, per game. You're certainly not going to catch as many balls as Jefferson did a year ago.
I mean,
those 15
Terrace
games.
Marshall's your number 1 receiver. He caught 2 passes. Now he had 67 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, they both went for touchdowns.
Exactly, but I mean, you're spreading the ball around.
So some of the other things that we saw in this game that we liked, I mentioned Roy a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
On that defensive line, all of a sudden now they were concerned going into, let's say, the last 10 days of camp. You're starting to get short of bodies.
Yeah.
And, what are we going to do? Well, then they got Farrell back. Farrell's giving them reps, okay? I expect Farrell to be, by the time they get to November, a real force. I mean, a guy, I think he's still working himself back into shape. But you can see when he's in there, he's making plays. It just, the extension of missing all that camp, he's not in the best of shape. But when he's in there, he can play. You're going to get Glenn Logan back this week, who's been out for the first 2. And now if you can add Roy, well, that's 3 guys that you didn't expect to have a week and a half ago. If you can add that to what you already have, and I think Apuaika is playing very well so far. So that becomes less of a concern than it was 10 to 12 days ago.
Well, you knew you had very talented freshmen, but you didn't know how much they were going to be able to give you. And we've heard from Coach O in training camp, I mean, they were all rotating in there, but okay, when it got tight, when it got game time, were you going to run those guys out there? And I thought he had a really nice day. Now, it's never going to show up on the stat line, but I thought he pressured the quarterback from the middle of the defense, which is very important. He was pushing his guy back into the quarterback. It actually made Vandy kind of get out of the pocket there a couple of different times. And so it's a position that we were concerned about because even as well as Apuaika is playing, like, we know his body type. We know he's going to need a breather. We know he's going to be tapping his head, asking to come out after a couple of plays. And so you need some other guys to step up. And this was a very talented freshman defensive tackle class. But talent only takes you so far. What do you do when the live bullets start flying? Well, he's actually answered. It was against Vanderbilt. We'll have to see as we get further along. I mean, you're going to play much better offensive lines. But if you can get 12 snaps from Roy a game with getting Glenn Logan back, then that's gigantic.
And again, as they get more comfortable in what Pelini's asking them to do, I brought up the Arizona State game. They got that fixed. They got that fixed in a pretty big hurry. Now, the Tennessee game that year was
Let's not even talk about that.
An unusual set of circumstances, to say the least, with that Monday night game. But by the time they got into the middle part of that season, and certainly toward the end part of that season, that defense was humming. And that's what I expect to see here as well. overall, Brian wants to know what kind of grade we would give the defense
in this matchup.
Yeah, I would say an A minus.
I'd say a B just because of the opponent, but I thought there was things again that you needed to fix that you got fixed. I thought Stevens and Cox were fantastic.
Yes.
By the way, I thought they were really good. And they had a lot of plays in the first week. Now, Cox had a couple things in coverage, but I thought they were even better than they were in the first game. You've got two studs right there that can play with anybody in the country. So just because of the opponent, but still, there was things you had to do. Andre Anthony flashed. That's the guy we hadn't talked about. I thought Andre Anthony flashed a couple times as well.
I'll give him an A minus because I'll ding them for a couple things. There were still too many explosive plays. There were 5 explosive plays in this game. That's more than I would want.
Yeah.
Against the Vanderbilt, if you give up 5 explosive plays against Mississippi State, the way they throw the football, okay. But against Vanderbilt, that number was a little bit too high. I'll ding them a little bit because the touchdown came on a 3rd down and goal from the 8, which is that's a down that you really should win. And they got bailed out on the wheel route, which would have been the most explosive play of the game for Vanderbilt. The rest of it I thought was pretty good. They got off the field on 3rd down. It was like to see that number improve a little bit, but not bad. They held the passing game in check. I thought, and your runs were for under 4 yards a carry, about 3.5 yards a carry. I can live with that all day.